The red warning lights flashed across the command center of Earth Fleet Station Alpha. Admiral Park Hyun stood before the massive viewing screen, her hands clasped behind her back. The alien message had been repeating for 3 hours now, and each time she heard it, her stomach twisted tighter. "Play it again," she ordered. The communications officer pressed a button. The screen filled with the image of a towering alien creature. Its skin was dark purple, covered in what looked like natural armor plates. 4 arms extended from its massive torso, each ending in clawed hands. Most terrifying were its eyes, 6 of them arranged in 2 rows across its elongated skull, all glowing with a cold blue light. "I am War Prime Thexus of the Vorthak Empire," the creature spoke in perfect English, though its voice sounded like grinding metal. "Your species has entered space belonging to the Vorthak. You have built colonies on worlds that are ours by right, of conquest." Admiral Park had heard this part dozens of times. The aliens' words were clear and simple, but their meaning was terrible. "By the ancient laws of war, I challenge your species to single combat. Send your greatest warrior to face me in the arena. If your champion wins, humans may keep the Kepler system. If I win, your species will be removed from all Vorthak space. You have 72 Earth hours to decide." The message ended. The screen went black. "How long do we have left?" Park asked. 18 hours, Admiral," replied Lieutenant Choi Min from the communications desk. Park rubbed her forehead. 18 hours to find humanity's greatest warrior. The problem was, all of their best soldiers were either dead, missing, or scattered across the galaxy on missions that could not be recalled in time. "Status report on our available personnel," Park said. Captain Jung Ha stepped forward with a data pad. "Admiral, it's not good. Colonel Kim is leading the assault on the Centauri rebels. Won't be back for 3 weeks. Major Lee is deep undercover with the Tau Ceti pirates. Captain Song died in the Proxima incident 3 months ago, along with most of his team." Park's jaw tightened. The Proxima incident. They had lost some of their best people there, including an entire Special Forces squad. Only one man had survived that disaster. "What about Sergeant Kim Tae?" she asked quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone knew about Kim Tae. He had been the sole survivor when his squad tried to rescue hostages from a crashed transport ship near Proxima Centauri. The mission had gone wrong in every possible way. Pirates had booby-trapped the ship. When Tae's team tried to save the civilians, the pirates detonated explosives. 12 good soldiers died. Tae lived because he had been outside the ship, trying to find another way in. "He's on leave," Captain Jung said carefully. "Extended leave." "Where is he?" Jung looked uncomfortable. "Tokyo, Admiral. He's been there for 2 weeks." Park knew what that meant. After losing his entire squad, Tae had started drinking heavily. The man who had once been their most reliable soldier was now drowning his guilt in alcohol. Military psychologists said he needed time to heal. Time they did not have. "Get him," Park ordered. "Admiral, with respect, he's not in any condition to fight," Jung protested. "He's all we have," Park said firmly. "Lieutenant Choi, send a team to bring him back, now." Meanwhile, in a small bar in the Shibuya district of Tokyo, Sergeant Kim Tae lay face down on a sticky table. Empty bottles of soju surrounded him like fallen soldiers. The bar was nearly empty, just Tae, the bartender, and an old man playing a broken arcade game in the corner. Tae had been drinking for 6 days straight. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw their faces. Park Min-ho, the youngest member of his squad, who had just turned 21. Lee Soo-jin, who had been planning to marry his girlfriend when they got back to Earth. Captain Song Woo-bin, who had 3 children waiting for him at home, all dead because Tae had made the wrong call. Bartender, an elderly Japanese man named Tanaka, looked at Tae with a mixture of pity and annoyance. "You drink too much," he said in broken English. "Maybe go home?" Tae lifted his head slightly. His eyes were bloodshot, his face unshaven. "No home," he mumbled. "Nothing left." Tanaka shook his head and went back to cleaning glasses. The door to the bar burst open. 3 people in military uniforms rushed in. 2 military police officers and Lieutenant Choi Min. Tae recognized her voice before he even looked up. "Sergeant Kim Tae, you're coming with us," Choi said. Tay laughed bitterly. Let me guess. Another mission. Another chance to get good people killed. The fate of humanity depends on this one, Choi said seriously. Humanity's screwed then, Tay replied, trying to take another drink from an empty bottle. The two MP officers moved to either side of him. Gently but firmly, they pulled him to his feet. Tay did not resist. He was too drunk and too tired to fight. What's this about? He asked as they helped him walk toward the door. Aliens, Choi said. They want to fight our best warrior. Tay stopped, walking, and stared at her. And you came for me? You're all we have left. The truth of those words hit Tay like a physical blow. All the great warriors of humanity were gone, and they were left with a broken-down sergeant who could barely stand. Up straight. I can't, he said quietly. I'll just get everyone killed again. There is no everyone this time, Choi said. Just you. They helped him into a military transport vehicle. As they drove through the neon-lit streets of Tokyo toward the spaceport, Choi explained the situation. An alien empire called the Vorthak had challenged humanity to single combat. Their champion was something called War Prime Thexus, described as the greatest warrior in their history. What do we know about him? Tay asked, his head starting to clear slightly. He's 9 feet tall, has natural armor plating, and 4 arms. He's won 847 battles across the galaxy and has never been defeated, Choi read from her datapad. Great, Tay said. Anything else I should know? He's killed champions from 12 different species. Tay leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. 3 months ago, he had been one of Earth's elite soldiers. Now he was a drunk being asked to save humanity. The irony was not lost on him. At the spaceport, Admiral Park was waiting. She looked at Tay as he stumbled out of the transport vehicle, supported by the 2 MPs. His uniform was wrinkled and stained, his face pale and sweaty. This is our champion? She asked Choi quietly. It's him or nobody, Admiral. Park approached. Tay. He tried to stand at attention, but swayed slightly. The smell of alcohol was overwhelming. Sergeant, do you understand what we're asking of you? Park said. Tay looked at her with bloodshot eyes. You want me to fight some alien monster to save humanity? That's correct. And if I lose, everyone dies? Yes. Tay was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, When do we leave? Now, Park replied. As they walked toward the waiting spacecraft, Tay felt a strange calm settle over him. For 3 months, he had been running from his guilt and shame. Now, perhaps, he could do something useful with his life, even if it was the last thing he ever did. The ship's engines roared to life, carrying Earth's most unlikely champion toward a destiny none of them could imagine. The spaceship's soul's pride cut through the darkness between stars. In the medical bay, Sergeant Kim Tae sat on an examination table while Dr. Yang Su checked his vital signs. The ship's doctor was a small woman with kind eyes, but her expression was worried. Your liver function is poor, she said, looking at the test results on her scanner. Your blood alcohol level is still dangerously high. When did you last eat a real meal? Tae tried to remember. Tuesday, maybe? It's Friday, Dr. Yang said with a sigh. I'm going to give you IV fluids and some vitamins. Your body needs time to recover. How much time do we have? Tae asked. 14 hours until we reach the rendezvous point. 14 hours to prepare. For a fight that would decide the fate of humanity. Tae almost laughed at the impossibility of it all. Captain Jung-ha entered the medical bay. She was the ship's commanding officer, a stern woman in her 40s who had served in 3 different wars. She looked at Tae like he was a broken piece of equipment that might explode at any moment. Dr. Yang, can you give us a moment? She asked. The doctor nodded and left them alone. Sergeant, I need to ask you something directly, Captain Jung said. Are you going to be able to do this? Tae met her eyes. I don't know. She appreciated his honesty. Most soldiers would have given her false confidence. Tell me about the Proxima incident, she said. Tae's hands began to shake slightly. I'd rather not. You need to talk about it. If you go into that arena carrying that guilt, it will get you killed. Tae was quiet for a long time. Then he began to speak. We got a distress call from a civilian transport. Pirates had attacked it near Proxima Centauri. The ship was damaged and drifting. There were 43 civilians on board, including children. Captain Young sat down across from him. Go on. My squad was the closest. We had 12 men, all good soldiers. When we boarded the transport, we found 20 civilians still alive in the main cargo hold. The pirates had booby-trapped the area. Around them. Tay's voice became quieter. I should have called for backup. Should have waited for bomb disposal experts. But those people were scared, and some were injured. I thought we could handle it. What happened? I sent half my squad to secure the engine room while I took the others to get the civilians out. We found the first set of bombs easily. They were meant to be found. But there were others, hidden better. Tay rubbed his face with his hands. I was outside the ship checking for external explosives when everything went wrong. The pirates had a remote detonator. They waited until most of my people were in the cargo hold, then they set off every bomb at once. How many survived? Just me. 43 civilians dead, 12 soldiers dead, all because I was impatient. Captain Young studied his face. You know that's not your fault, right? The pirates killed those people, not you. I was the squad leader. They were my responsibility. And now humanity is your responsibility. The words hung in the air between them. Tay looked up at her. That doesn't make me feel better. It shouldn't, but it should make you focused. Dr. Yang returned with an IV bag and needle. I need to get some fluids into you, she said to Tay. Your dehydration is severe. As the doctor worked, combat specialist Li Wan entered the medical bay. He was a big man with scars on his arms and a serious expression. He carried a data pad filled with information about their alien opponent. I've been studying our enemy, Li said without introduction. War Prime Thexus is not just big and strong. He's also smart. Look at this. He showed them video footage from previous battles. On the screen, a massive purple alien fought against various opponents. Some were clearly stronger than him, others faster, but Thexus defeated them all through superior tactics and experience. He studies his opponents before fighting them, Li explained. He learns their fighting styles, their weaknesses, their psychology. Then he adapts his strategy accordingly. What does that mean for us? Captain Young asked. It means he's probably been studying human combat footage for the past few hours. He knows how we fight, how we move, how we think. Tay watched the alien warrior tear through an opponent that looked like a giant insect. He's fought 12 different species? 12 that we know of. Each one was supposedly the greatest warrior their people could produce. And he killed them all? Everyone. Dr. Yang finished connecting the IV and checked Tai's pulse again. Your heart rate is still too high. I can give you something to calm you down. No drugs, Tay said firmly. I need to think clearly. You're hungover, dehydrated, and traumatized, Dr. Yang pointed out. How much clearer can you think? Clearer than I would be on combat drugs. Li Wan looked surprised. You're not going to use enhancement drugs? Every other champion has used everything available. Strength boosters, reaction enhancers, pain suppressors. And they all lost, Tay pointed out. That's true, Captain Young admitted. Maybe doing the same thing they did isn't the answer. Li continued showing them footage. The Vorthak fight with honor codes. No projectile weapons, no explosives, no advanced technology. Hand-to-hand combat only, though basic melee weapons are allowed. What weapons are you planning to take? Captain Young asked Tay. Tay thought about it. Combat knife. Maybe a riot baton if they allow it. That's all? I'm not trying to outmuscle him. I need to outthink him. Dr. Yang checked her scanner again. Your blood alcohol is dropping, but you're still going to have withdrawal symptoms. Shaking hands, nausea, difficulty concentrating. Great, Tay muttered. I could give you something mild to help with the symptoms. No, I fight better when I'm uncomfortable. Keeps me alert. This was a lie. Tay had no idea how he was going to fight in his current condition. But something deep inside him rebelled against the idea of going into battle drugged up. His squad had died because he made bad decisions. If he was going to die too, at least it would be with a clear head. Lieutenant Bei Jin's voice came over the ship's communication system. All personnel will be dropping out of faster-than-light travel in 1 hour. Prepare for arrival at the contest zone. Tay looked around the medical bay at the 3 people trying to help him prepare. Dr. Yang with her worried expression, Captain Jung with her military bearing, Li Wan with his tactical knowledge. They were all depending on him, just like his squad had depended on him at Proxima Centauri. "Can I ask you all something?" Tay said. They nodded. "If I don't make it back, will you tell people that I tried? I know I'm not much of a champion, but I want them to know I tried." Dr. Yang put her hand on his shoulder. "You're going to make it back." "You don't know that." "No," she admitted, "but I believe it." Captain Jung stood up. "I've seen a lot of soldiers in my time, Sergeant. The best ones aren't always the strongest or the fastest. Sometimes they're just the ones who refuse to give up." "Even when they're drunk?" "Especially when they're drunk," she said with a slight smile. Tay felt the IV fluid starting to work. His headache was getting better, and his vision was clearer. But his hands still shook, and his stomach felt like it was full of angry snakes. "1 more hour," he said to himself. 1 hour to prepare for a fight that would decide whether humanity lived or died. 1 hour to get ready to face an alien warrior who had never been defeated. Tay closed his eyes and tried not to think about the faces of his dead squad mates. Instead, he focused on something Captain Jung had said. Sometimes the best soldiers were just the ones who refused to give up. He could do that. No matter how scared he was, no matter how sick he felt, no matter how hopeless it seemed, he could refuse to give up. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all he had. The moon, orbiting Kepler 442b, looked like something from a nightmare. Its surface was covered in jagged black rocks that jutted up like broken teeth. The thin atmosphere gave everything a strange, dreamlike quality. Above them, the gas giant. Kepler 442b filled half the sky, its red and orange clouds swirling in massive storms. Tay stood at the viewing window of the transport shuttle, watching as they descended toward the arena. His hangover was still there, making his head throb with each heartbeat. But the IV fluids had helped. He could think more clearly now, even if his hands still shook slightly. "Look at that," Dr. Yang whispered, pointing out the window. The arena was enormous. It had been carved directly into the surface of the moon, forming a bowl-shaped depression nearly a mile across. The walls were lined with what looked like viewing platforms, and Tay could see thousands of alien creatures filling the seats. Ships from dozens of different species hung in orbit around the moon like metal clouds. "How many are watching?" Tay asked. "Intelligence estimates over 200,000 beings," Lieutenant Beijin replied from the pilot's seat. "Representatives from most of the known intelligent species in this part of the galaxy." "No pressure," Tay muttered. Captain Young-ha checked her watch. 30 minutes until the contest begins. The shuttle touched down on a landing platform at the edge of the arena. Through the thin atmosphere, Tay could hear a sound like distant thunder, the voices of thousands of alien spectators. He had fought in front of crowds before, but never anything like this. A delegation of Vorthak officials was waiting for them. They were smaller than War Prime Thexus, but still impressive, purple-skinned, four-armed, with those unsettling 6 eyes. The leader wore elaborate robes and carried what appeared to be a ceremonial staff. "I am Judge Prime Kexhall," the alien said through a translation device. "I will oversee this contest according to the ancient laws of combat." Admiral Park had arrived on a separate ship and now stood beside Tay. "We understand the rules," she said formally. "The human champion may bring basic melee weapons," Kexhall continued. "No projectile weapons, no explosives, no advanced technology. The contest continues until one fighter yields or dies." "What if both fighters are unable to continue?" Admiral Park asked. "Then both species forfeit their claims, and the Vorthak Empire takes control by default." Tay nodded. "I understand." Judge Prime Kexhall studied Tay with all 6 eyes. The alien's expression was unreadable, but Tay got the feeling he was not impressed. "This is your greatest warrior?" Kexhall asked. "He is our champion," Admiral Park replied carefully. The Judge Prime made a sound that might have been laughter. "War Prime Thexus has faced the mightiest fighters from across the galaxy. Giants from the Silicon worlds, hunters from the Predator. Planets, warriors bred for nothing but combat. And you send this?" Tay looked down at himself. He was still wearing his standard military uniform, wrinkled from sleeping in the bar. His hair was messy, his face unshaven. Compared to the elaborate warriors other species probably sent, he must have looked like a joke. Appearances can be deceiving, Admiral Park said with more confidence than she felt. Indeed they can, Kexhal agreed. Come. War Prime Thexus awaits. They walked through a tunnel that led from the landing platform to the arena floor. The walls were covered in alien writing that glowed with soft blue light. Tay could feel the weight of the gas giant's gravity affecting him even through the moon's lower gravitational pull, making each step feel slightly strange. How are you feeling? Dr. Yang asked quietly as they walked. Like I'm about to throw up, Tay answered honestly. That might actually be helpful, she said. Nausea can heighten your reflexes and make you more alert to danger. Or it could make me dizzy and slow. Try to think positive thoughts. Tay almost laughed. The last time I tried to think positive thoughts, 12 people died. Dr. Yang was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You know, in medical school, they taught us that the human body can do incredible things when it's pushed to its limits. Mothers lifting cars off their children, soldiers fighting for hours with serious injuries. The mind can overcome almost any physical limitation when the stakes are high enough. What are you trying to say? I'm saying that maybe being hungover and scared isn't the worst thing. Maybe it will make you more dangerous, not less. They emerged from the tunnel onto the arena floor. The sound hit Tay like a physical wall. Thousands of alien voices cheering, roaring, making sounds he had never heard before. The arena was even more impressive from inside. The floor was covered in the same black rock as the moon's surface, with scattered boulders and crevices that created a complex terrain. But it was War Prime Thexus who made Tay's stomach drop. The alien warrior stood in the center of the arena, easily 9 feet tall. His natural armor plating gleamed under the arena lights, and his 4 arms moved with fluid grace as he performed what looked like a warm-up routine. Each of his 6 eyes tracked different parts of the arena simultaneously, and when he moved, it was with the controlled power of a predator. That's a big alien, Tay said quietly. You've faced bigger challenges, Captain Young said, though she didn't sound entirely convinced. Thexus spotted the human delegation and turned toward them. When he walked, the ground seemed to shake slightly under his weight. He stopped about 20 feet away and spoke in a voice that echoed across the arena. I am War Prime Thexus, champion of the Vorthak Empire, victor of 847 combats. The translation device made his words sound mechanical, but the power behind them was unmistakable. I have studied your species, human. You are weak, slow, and fragile. Your champion appears to be sick. This will not take long. Tay stepped forward. Standing next to the massive alien, he looked like a child confronting an adult. I'm Sergeant Kim Tay, Earth Defense Forces. I'm here to fight you. Thexus leaned down to examine Tay more closely. You smell of alcohol. Are you intoxicated? Little, Tay admitted. This caused a stir in the crowd. Alien voices rose in what sounded like confusion and amusement. Several species began making sounds that might have been laughter. You send a drunk human to face me? Thexus asked, addressing Admiral Park. I send a soldier, she replied firmly. Thexus straightened up. This is insulting. I have prepared for months to face humanity's greatest warrior. I expected a challenge worthy of my skills. Maybe you'll get one, Tay said. The alien's 6 eyes focused on him. What weapons do you carry? Tay showed him a combat knife and a collapsible baton. Standard infantry gear, nothing special. That is all? That's all? Thexus gestured to a rack of weapons at the edge of the arena. Choose something more appropriate. I will not have it said that I defeated an unarmed opponent. Tay looked at the weapon rack. There were swords, axes, spears, and things he didn't recognize. All of them looked impressive and deadly. I'm good with what I have, he said. The crowd noise grew louder. Many of the alien spectators seemed confused by the human's choice. Some appeared to be placing bets, though Tay couldn't tell which way the odds were running. Judge Prime Kexhal raised his staff. Let all beings witness this combat between War Prime Thexus of the Vorthak Empire and Sergeant Kim Tay of the Human. Species, the winner's people shall claim this system. The loser's people shall be exiled from Vorthak space. The crowd fell silent. Combatants, are you ready? Thexus nodded and moved into what was clearly a combat stance. All four of his arms spread wide, his natural armor plates seemed to shift and lock into position, and his 6 eyes tracked every movement Tay made. Tay drew his combat knife and extended his baton. His hands were still shaking slightly, but his mind felt clearer than it had in months. Maybe it was the adrenaline, or maybe it was the knowledge that running away was no longer an option. "Ready," he said. Judge Prime Kexhal raised his staff, high into the air. The arena fell completely silent. Even the gas giant above seemed to pause in its eternal dance. "Let the combat begin." The staff came down, and War Prime Thexus charged. Tay had exactly 2 seconds to realize that all his preparation had been completely inadequate. The alien moved faster than anything that big had any right to move, covering the distance between them in 3 massive strides. But something strange happened in those 2 seconds. Instead of freezing or panicking, Tay's mind became perfectly calm. His hangover seemed to fade into the background. His hands stopped shaking. For the first time since Proxima Centauri, Sergeant Kim Tay felt like a soldier again. War Prime Thexus's first attack came like a thunderbolt. All 4 of his massive arms swept toward Tay in a coordinated pattern that should have ended the fight immediately. The alien had studied human combat techniques for hours, analyzing their movement patterns, reaction times, and fighting styles. He expected the human to dodge left or right, or possibly attempt to block with his primitive weapons. Tay did none of those things. Instead, he stumbled backward and to the side, his hangover making his balance uncertain. His foot caught on a piece of loose rock, and he windmilled his arms awkwardly to keep from falling. Thexus's carefully planned attack swept through empty air, the alien's momentum carrying him 2 steps past where Tay had been standing. The crowd made a sound like a collective gasp. In all of Thexus's previous battles, no opponent had ever avoided his opening strike simply by accident. Tay caught his balance and turned to face the alien warrior. His head was pounding, and the bright arena lights made his eyes water. "Sorry," he said automatically. "Still a little dizzy." Thexus spun around, his 6 eyes wide with confusion. According to every piece of data he had studied, humans were predictable fighters who relied on learned techniques and structured combat patterns. This human moved like he was broken, but somehow that had saved his life. "You fight strangely," Thexus observed. "I'm not really fighting yet," Tay replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I'm just trying not to fall down." In the observation booth high above the arena, Admiral Park gripped the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. "What is he doing?" she whispered. "I think he's being honest," Dr. Yang said, watching Tay sway slightly on his feet. "He really is just trying not to fall down." "That's our battle strategy? Not falling down? It's working so far." Thexus circled Tay slowly, all 6 eyes studying the human's movements. There was something wrong here. The human appeared to be barely functional, yet he had avoided an attack that had killed champions from a dozen worlds. Either this was some incredibly sophisticated fighting technique, or the human was just very lucky. Thexus decided to test which it was. He lunged forward again, this time with a simple 2-armed strike aimed directly at Tay's center mass. No fancy coordination, no complex patterns, just raw power and speed that would crush the human's ribs. Tay saw the attack coming and tried to step backward. His foot slipped on the rocky ground, and he fell sideways, landing hard on his shoulder. Thexus's fists slammed into the ground where Tay's chest had been, cracking the stone. Tay rolled away and got back to his feet, favoring his left shoulder. "Okay," he said to himself. "Maybe I should pay more attention." The alien crowd was becoming restless. This was not how these contests usually went. Normally, the first few exchanges established each fighter's skill level and fighting style. But the human seemed to have no style at all. He just moved randomly and accidentally avoided death. Thexus was beginning to feel something he had not experienced in decades of combat: uncertainty. "You mock me with this performance," he said, to Tay. "I'm really not," Tay replied, checking his shoulder to make sure it wasn't dislocated. "Trust me, if I was mocking you, I'd be a lot more creative about it." "Then fight me properly." "I'm trying to figure out how." This answer only confused Thexus more. He had fought trained warriors, savage beasts, and living weapons, but he had never fought someone who admitted they didn't know what they were doing. Tay wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and noticed it came away bloody. He must have bit his tongue when he fell. The taste of blood seemed to clear his head a little more. He looked at Thexus, really looked at him for the first time since the fight began. The alien was massive, armored, and incredibly strong. But he was also frustrated. His 6 eyes were tracking Tay's movements with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle. That was interesting. "You've been studying humans," Tay said. "Of course. But you've been studying the wrong humans." Tay began walking in a loose circle around Thexus, not in any recognizable combat pattern, just moving because standing still made him feel sick. "You studied our best warriors, right? Our elite soldiers, our combat specialists, our martial artists?" "Yes." "Well, I'm not one of those." Tay stumbled slightly but kept moving. "I'm just regular infantry. We don't fight pretty. We don't follow the rules. We just try to survive long enough to complete the mission." Thexus turned to follow Tay's movement, but something about the human's words bothered him. "What is your mission here?" "Not to lose." It was such a simple answer, but it made Thexus pause. Every other champion he had faced had come to the arena to prove their species' superiority, to demonstrate their fighting skills, to achieve glory in combat. This human just didn't want to lose. Tay suddenly stopped moving and pulled out his combat knife. The blade was only 6 inches long, practically a toy compared to the weapons other champions had carried, but he held it like he knew how to use it. "Okay," Tay said, his voice steadier than it had been since the fight started. "Let's try this again." Thexus approached more cautiously this time. The human's erratic movement had been confusing, but now he was standing still, apparently ready to fight properly. This made more sense. Thexus threw a testing jab with one arm, then followed up with a cross from another. These were basic strikes, designed to probe the human's defenses. Tay dodged the first punch by stepping inside its arc, closer to Thexus than the alien expected. The second punch grazed his ribs, but didn't connect solidly. As he moved, Tay slashed with his knife, scoring a shallow cut across Thexus's forearm. The alien's natural armor protected him from serious damage, but the cut drew a thin line of purple blood. It was the first time in this contest that Thexus had been touched by an opponent's weapon. The crowd erupted. Many of the alien spectators had never seen War Prime Thexus bleed. Thexus looked at the cut on his arm with something approaching shock. "How did you do that?" "I got lucky," Tay said honestly. But it hadn't been luck, not entirely. When Tay stepped close to the alien, he had noticed something. Thexus's natural armor was thickest on his chest, back, and shoulders, the places where other opponents would naturally aim their attacks. But the joints and inner surfaces of his arms were less protected. "You fight like prey," Thexus said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "Maybe," Tay replied, "but prey that fights back is dangerous." Thexus launched a more serious attack, all 4 arms working in combination to create a wall of destruction. This time, Tay didn't rely on accidental stumbles. He dropped low and rolled between the alien's legs, slashing at the back of Thexus's knee as he passed. Another cut, another thin line of purple blood. Thexus spun around, faster than something. His size should have been able to move, but Tay was already moving again, not in any pattern that made sense, not following any combat doctrine, just staying mobile and looking for opportunities. "Stand still and fight," Thexus roared. "Why would I do that?" Tay called back, breathing hard but still moving. "You're bigger, stronger, and have more arms than me. Standing still would be stupid." In the observation booth, combat specialist Li Wan was watching the fight with growing amazement. "He's not using any recognized fighting technique," he said. "What is he using?" Admiral Park asked. "Infantry tactics. He's treating this like urban combat. Stay mobile, use cover, hit soft targets, avoid direct confrontation." Is it working? So far. Down in the arena, Thexus was beginning to realize that he had made a fundamental error. He had prepared to fight humanity's greatest warrior, expecting someone who would meet him in honorable combat and test their skills against his. Instead, he was fighting someone who treated this like a street fight, ugly, practical, and focused entirely on winning rather than looking good while doing it. Tay used the rocky terrain to his advantage, jumping between boulders and using crevices for cover. When Thexus tried to follow him into tight spaces, the alien's size became a disadvantage. When Thexus tried to use his reach advantage, Tay would get close enough that two of the alien's four arms would interfere with each. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't honorable. It was barely even recognizable as combat technique. But Thexus was bleeding from 6 different cuts now, and the human hadn't taken a single solid hit. "This is impossible," Thexus muttered to himself. Tay heard him and smiled, grimly. "You know what's really impossible? 12 good soldiers dying because their sergeant made a bad call. But that happened anyway." He didn't know why he said it. Maybe because the fight was bringing back memories of Proxima Centauri. Maybe because he was starting to feel like a soldier again instead of a drunk. Or maybe because he was finally fighting for something that mattered. Thexus paused, sensing something different in the human's voice. "What did you say?" "Nothing important," Tay replied. "Just thinking out loud." But something had changed. The human's movements were becoming more focused, more deliberate. His amateur stumbling was being replaced by genuine tactical thinking. Thexus was beginning to understand that he wasn't just fighting a drunk human, he was fighting a soldier who had finally remembered how to fight. The fight had been going on for 20 minutes, and Thexus was starting to feel something he had never experienced before. Doubt. The human was still moving, still fighting, still causing him problems. By now, every other opponent he had faced would have been dead or unconscious. But this strange, drunk human kept finding ways to survive. Tay crouched behind a large boulder, breathing hard. His hangover was mostly gone now, burned away by adrenaline and physical exertion, but his body was starting to feel the strain. He had several bruises where Thexus had managed to clip him with glancing blows, and his left shoulder still ached from his fall earlier. But he was alive, and Thexus was bleeding from a dozen small cuts. "Human!" Thexus called out. "Show yourself! Stop hiding like a coward!" Tay almost laughed. 3 months ago, he would have been insulted by being called a coward. Now he understood that staying alive was more important than looking brave. Not hiding," Tay called back. "I'm using cover. There's a difference." "It is the same thing." "No, it's not. Hiding is what you do when you're scared. Using cover is what you do when you're not stupid." Tay peered around the edge of the boulder. Thexus was standing about 30 feet away, all 6 eyes scanning the arena for his opponent. The alien's natural armor had protected him from serious injury, but the accumulation of small wounds was starting to affect him. Purple blood stained his arms and legs, and he was moving slightly more slowly than at the beginning of the fight. The problem was, Tay wasn't sure how to win. His knife could cut the alien, but not deeply enough to cause real damage. His baton was useless against Thexus's armor. He needed a different approach. Tay looked around the arena, studying the terrain. The rocky ground was uneven, full of loose stones and hidden crevices. Above them, the gas giant's gravity was affecting the moon's surface in subtle ways, making some areas less stable than others. An idea began to form. "Hey, Thexus," Tay called out. "What? Can I ask you something?" The alien sounded suspicious. "What do you want to know? How many humans have you fought before me? You are the first. That's what I thought." Tay shifted position, moving to a different boulder while still staying hidden. "You know what's funny? You've been studying the wrong thing." "What do you mean?" "You've been studying how humans fight in single combat. But that's not really our thing." Tay threw a rock in the opposite direction from where he was hiding. Thexus spun toward the sound, then realized he had been tricked. His 6 eyes narrowed with frustration. "Humans are pack hunters," Tay continued, moving again. "We don't usually fight alone. We fight in groups, and we use tools, and we change the battlefield to suit our needs. This is single combat. You cannot change the rules." "I'm not changing the rules. I'm just using them differently than you expected." Tay had moved to a position near one of the larger rock formations. This area of the arena floor was more unstable, with loose stones and what appeared to be a small cliff face. The gas giant's tidal forces had created a network of stress fractures in the rock. "You want to know what else humans do?" Tay called out. "We cheat." He picked up a handful of dirt and small rocks. When Thexus came around the boulder looking for him, Tay threw the debris directly at the alien's 6 eyes. Thexus roared in pain and anger, clawing at his face with all 4 hands. The dirt and stone fragments weren't dangerous, but they were irritating and temporarily blinding. "That is dishonorable," Thexus shouted. "It's practical," Tay replied, already moving to his next position. The alien crowd was making sounds that could have been outrage or excitement. Some species clearly disapproved of the humans' tactics, while others seemed fascinated by this unusual approach to combat. In the observation booth, Judge Prime Kexhall was consulting with other Vorthak officials. "These tactics are unusual," he said. "Are they against the rules?" Admiral Park asked. "No," Kexhall admitted reluctantly. "The ancient laws say only that projectile weapons and advanced technology are forbidden. Using the environment and creative tactics is not prohibited." Then the fight continues. Down in the arena, Thexus had cleared his eyes and was looking for Tay with renewed anger. The alien's movements were becoming less controlled, more aggressive. He was letting his frustration affect his judgment. "Where are you, coward?" he bellowed. "I'm right here," Tay said. He was standing on top of the cliff face, about 15 feet above where Thexus was searching. The alien looked up, surprised to see his opponent in such an exposed position. "Finally, you show yourself." Thexus began climbing toward Tay, using his 4 arms to pull himself up the rock face with impressive speed. But as he climbed, Tay began kicking loose stones down at him, not large enough to cause serious damage, but enough to be annoying and distracting. "Stop that!" Thexus demanded. "Make me!" Tay replied, kicking more rocks. Thexus reached the top of the cliff and lunged at Tay with all 4 arms extended. But Tay had already moved to the edge of the cliff, near an area where the rock looked particularly unstable. "You know what else humans are good at?" Tay said, backing toward the unstable area. "Engineering." Thexus charged, intent on finally crushing his elusive opponent. But as his massive weight hit the stressed rock near the cliff edge, something Tay had been hoping for finally happened. The ground gave way. A section of the cliff face collapsed, sending both fighters tumbling down in an avalanche of rock and debris. Tay had been expecting this and managed to control his fall somewhat, rolling and using his smaller size to avoid the worst of the falling stones. Thexus was not so lucky. The alien's massive frame made him a larger target, and several heavy rocks struck him during the fall. When the dust settled, he was partially buried under a pile of rubble, purple blood running from a cut on his head. Tay picked himself up, checking for injuries. His ribs hurt, and he had scraped his hands and face, but nothing seemed broken. He looked at Thexus, who was struggling to free himself from the rocks. "That was not honorable combat!" Thexus protested, his voice strained. "I never said I was." "Honorable," Tay replied. "I said I was trying to win." The alien managed to push away most of the rocks and get to his feet, but he was clearly hurt. One of his arms was hanging at an odd angle, possibly broken. His natural armor was cracked in several places, and he was bleeding more heavily now. "You fight like a savage," Thexus said. "I fight like a human." Tay drew his knife again and extended his baton. For the first time since the battle began, he felt like he might actually have a chance. "You want to know the real difference between humans and other species?" Tay said, circling the injured alien. "Other species fight to prove how strong they are. Humans fight to survive, and will do whatever it takes." Thexus tried to assume a combat stance, but his injured arm made his movements awkward. "I am still stronger than you." "Maybe, but you're hurt, you're frustrated, and you're fighting on my terms now instead of yours." "What terms are those?" Tay smiled grimly. "Ugly ones." The crowd had fallen mostly silent, watching this strange contest unfold. Many of the alien spectators had come expecting to see a demonstration of martial prowess and fighting skill. Instead, they were witnessing something much more primitive and desperate, 2 beings trying to survive by any means necessary. In the observation booth, Dr. Yang was watching Tay with a mixture of pride and concern. "He's not the same person." "Who left the bar in Tokyo?" she said. "What do you mean?" Admiral Park asked. "Look at him. He's thinking clearly, moving with purpose. The hangover is gone. But more than that, he's fighting like he has something to live for." "What changed?" Dr. Yang smiled. He remembered that he's a soldier. Down in the arena, Tai was preparing for what he hoped would be the final phase of the battle. Thexus was wounded but still dangerous. The alien's size and strength advantages hadn't disappeared, but they were reduced now. More importantly, Tay had figured out something crucial about his opponent. Thexus had been trained to fight honorable warriors who followed predictable patterns. He didn't know how to deal with someone who treated combat like a problem to be solved, rather than a contest to be won. "Ready for round 2? Tay asked. Thexus roared and charged again, but this time his movements were slower and less coordinated. Tay stepped aside and struck at the alien's injured arm with his baton, causing Thexus to stumble. The real fight was just beginning. The final phase of the battle was unlike anything the alien spectators had ever witnessed. For 45 minutes, they watched as a small, apparently drunk human systematically wore down the greatest warrior in Vorthak history through tactics. That ranged from clever to completely insane. Tay had stopped trying to fight like a traditional warrior. Instead, he fought like someone who had spent years in urban combat zones, where survival mattered more than style. He used every dirty trick he could think of, throwing sand, using his baton to trip Thexus, even at one point removing his boot and throwing it at the alien's face as a distraction. "This is madness!" Thexus gasped, limping heavily on his left leg where Tay had managed to damage the joint behind his knee armor. "This is Tuesday," Tay replied, breathing just as hard. Both fighters were exhausted now. Thexus had dozens of small cuts covering his body, his armor was cracked in multiple places, and one of his arms was clearly broken. But he was still standing, still fighting, still dangerous. Tay wasn't in much better shape. His uniform was torn and bloody, his face was bruised, and his ribs felt like they might be cracked. But his mind was clearer than it had been in months. Every movement had purpose, every decision was calculated. "You cannot win," Thexus said, though he didn't sound as confident as he had at the beginning. "I am stronger. I am faster. I am trained." "Maybe," Tay agreed, "but I'm more stubborn." It was true. For 3 months, Tay had been trying to drink himself to death because he couldn't live with his guilt. But now, facing actual death in combat, he discovered that he wasn't ready to die. Not like this. Not when people were counting on him. Thexus lunged forward one more time, putting everything he had left into a final attack. All 3 of his functioning arms reached for Tay, trying to grab him and crush him with raw strength. But Tay had been waiting for this moment. Instead of dodging backward or to the side, he stepped forward, inside the reach of Thexus's arms. The alien's hands closed on empty air as Tay ducked low and drove his knife upward, aiming for the one spot he had identified as potentially vulnerable, the gap where Thexus's neck armor met his chest armor. The blade found its mark. Thexus froze, his 6 eyes wide with shock. Purple blood began flowing around the knife handle. For a moment, neither fighter moved. "How?" Thexus whispered. "Experience," Tay said quietly. "You fought 847 warriors. I've fought in 3 wars and survived more battles than I can count. The difference is, your opponents were trying to beat you. I was just trying to not lose." Thexus staggered backward, the knife still buried in his neck. He looked at his hands, seeing his own blood for the first time in decades of combat. "You have defeated me," he said, his voice weak but clear. "I yield." The arena fell completely silent. 200,000 alien beings sat in stunned disbelief. War Prime Thexus, the undefeated champion of the Vorthak Empire, had just surrendered to a hungover human soldier. Judge Prime Kexhal's voice echoed across the arena through the translation system. "The contest is concluded. Victory goes to Sergeant Kim Tay of the human species." The silence lasted for exactly 3 seconds. Then the arena erupted in the loudest noise Tay had ever heard. Some species were cheering, others were making sounds of outrage, and many seemed to be arguing among themselves about what they had just witnessed. Tay pulled his knife free and helped Thexus sit down on a large rock. The alien was bleeding heavily, but didn't appear to be in immediate danger of dying. "You fought well," Tay said, applying pressure to the wound with a piece of torn cloth from his uniform. "I fought according to the rules," Thexus replied. "You fought to win. There is a difference." "Yeah, there is." Dr. Yang and a team of medics rushed onto the arena floor. They immediately began working on both fighters, though Thexus's injuries were more serious. "How do you feel?" Dr. Yang asked Tay as she examined a cut on his forehead. Like I got hit by a truck, Tay replied. But also, good. Better than I've felt in months. Admiral Park approached with Judge Prime Kexhall and several other Vorthak officials. She looked like she couldn't quite believe what had just happened. The Kepler system belongs to humanity, Kexhall announced formally. The ancient laws of combat have been satisfied. Thank you, Admiral Park replied. We will honor the agreement. But Kexhall wasn't finished. He turned to Tay with all 6 eyes focused intently on him. I must ask, human. Your admiral told us you were an average soldier. Was this true? Tay looked at Admiral Park, who nodded slightly. He thought about the question seriously. Yeah, pretty much, he said finally. I mean, I'm not the worst soldier in the fleet, but I'm definitely not the best either. I'm just persistent. If you are average, Kexhall said slowly, then what are your best soldiers like? Admiral Park smiled for the first time in days. Would you like to find out? No, Kexhall said quickly. No, I think we have learned enough about humans for now. As the medical teams worked on both fighters, word of the battle began spreading across the galaxy through faster-than-light communications. The story was almost impossible to believe. A drunk human had defeated the greatest warrior in Vorthak. History using tactics that included throwing dirt, kicking rocks, and causing a landslide. Within hours, every species in known space was reassessing their assumptions about humanity. 3 days later, Tay woke up in the medical bay of Souls, Pride. His body ached all over, but the doctors said he would make a full recovery. More importantly, his mind felt clear for the first time since Proxima Centauri. Dr. Yang was sitting beside his bed when he opened his eyes. How long was I out? He asked. 2 days. You were exhausted, dehydrated, and had 3 cracked ribs, but you're going to be fine. Tay sat up slowly, testing his injuries. What about Thexus? He'll live. The knife missed all the vital organs. He asked to speak with you when you wake up. Really? Why? I think you'll have to ask him that yourself. Later that day, Tay visited Thexus in the alien medical facility on the moon. The great warrior was lying in a bed designed for his massive frame connected to various monitoring devices that beeped softly. You came, Thexus said when he saw Tay enter. You asked to see me. I wanted to understand something. Why did you fight so strangely? It was not cowardice. I could see that you were not afraid to die. But your tactics were unlike anything I had studied. Tay pulled up a chair and sat down. Can I tell you something honestly? Please. I didn't have any tactics. I was just trying to survive long enough to figure out how to win. That makes no sense. Sure it does. You studied human warriors, right? People who had trained their whole lives to fight? But I'm not really a warrior. I'm just a soldier. There's a difference. Explain. Tay thought about how to put it into words. Warriors fight for honor, or glory, or to prove how skilled they are. Soldiers fight to complete the mission and go home alive. When you're a soldier, you don't care about looking good. You just care about winning. And your mission was to defeat me? My mission was to not let humanity lose. Everything else was just problem-solving. Thexus was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, I have fought champions from 12 species. All of them were warriors. None of them were soldiers. Is that why you lost? Perhaps. Or perhaps I lost because I have never fought someone who was willing to be defeated by the battle, but unwilling to be defeated by the war. Tay wasn't sure he understood the distinction, but he nodded anyway. There is something else, Thexus continued. Your people are now famous across the galaxy. Every species knows that humanity defeated the Vorthak through unconventional means. Is that good or bad? For you? Very good. No one wants to fight. Humans now, they are all afraid that you will do something unexpected and impossible. Tay laughed. Little do they know, I was just making it up as I went along. That, Thexus said, is exactly what makes you terrifying. A week later, Tay was back on Earth, sitting in the same Tokyo bar where Lieutenant Choi had found him. But this time, he was drinking coffee instead of alcohol. The bartender, Tanaka, kept staring at him like he was famous, which, apparently, he was. The news broadcasts were calling him the champion of humanity and the soldier who saved our species. There were requests for interviews, book deals, and speaking engagements. Admiral Park had offered him any assignment he wanted, anywhere in the fleet. Tay had turned them all down. "What will you do now?" Dr. Yang asked. She had come to check on him before returning to her assignment. "I don't know," Tay admitted. "For 3 months I've been trying to forget about being a soldier. Now I remember why I became one in the first place. To fight aliens? To protect people?" They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the crowds walk by outside the bar's window. "You know," Dr. Yang said eventually, "there are always people who need protecting." "I know. And there are always missions that need soldiers instead of warriors." "I know that too." "So?" Tay finished his coffee and stood up. For the first time in months, he felt like he had somewhere to go. "So I guess I should get back to work." He left money on the table and walked out into the Tokyo street. Behind him, Tanaka shook his head in amazement. He had served a lot of customers over the years, but he had never served the man who saved humanity by refusing to fight fair. As Tay disappeared into the crowd, news reports continued broadcasting across the galaxy. The story of the drunk human soldier who